In June 1994, the Morrison family checked into room 237 at the Greystone Hotel. The front desk logged them in. Housekeeping saw them the next morning. But when security opened the door, 48 hours later, the room was empty. Except for one thing. The beds were made, the table was set for dinner, and the TV was still on. 31 years later, room 237 has never been rented again. Subscribe to find out why. The Greystone Hotel stood on the corner of Ashford Street and 3rd Avenue like a monument to a forgotten era. Built in 1927, it had survived the Depression, 2 wars, and the slow decay of downtown. By the 1990s, it was no longer grand, just functional. A place for traveling salesmen, budget tourists, and families passing through on their way to somewhere better. The lobby smelled of old carpet and lemon polish. The wallpaper was faded. The chandelier, once elegant, now hung dim and dusty. But the Greystone was clean. It was safe, and it was cheap. On June 14, 1994, at approximately 4:17 p.m., the Morrison family walked through the front doors. David Morrison, age 42, accountant from Ohio, tired eyes, thinning hair, a man who looked like he carried the weight of spreadsheets in his shoulders. Rebecca Morrison, age 38, elementary school teacher, warm smile, patient voice, the kind of woman who smoothed over tension before it became a fight. And their children. 4 of them. Emma, 14, quiet, bookish, always carrying a novel. Lucas, 11, restless energy, couldn't sit still. Sophie, 8, curious, talkative, asked 100 questions a day. And Mia, 5, the youngest, shy, clutching a stuffed rabbit she called Mr. Hops. They had been on the road for 6 hours. A family vacation. Nothing extravagant. Just a week-long drive, through the Midwest, stopping at landmarks, taking photos, making memories. The Greystone was supposed to be one night. A place to rest before continuing west. David approached the front desk, where a young clerk named Trevor Walsh was working his second shift of the week. Trevor would later become the last person to see the Morrisons alive. "Checking in," David said, sliding a credit card across the counter. "Reservation under Morrison." Trevor typed into the ancient computer. "Got it. 1 room, 2 queens, roll-away cot, 3rd floor, room 237. "Perfect." Trevor printed the receipt, circled the room number, and handed over 2 key cards. "Checkouts at 11 a.m. Breakfast starts at 6:30 in the lobby. Ice machines at the end of the hall. Elevators to your left." David nodded. "Thanks." The family gathered their bags and moved toward the elevator. Trevor watched them go, the way desk clerks do when they have nothing else to look at. He noticed Sophie skipping ahead, Lucas dragging his feet, Emma with her nose already back in her book. Normal, unremarkable, forgettable. Except they would never leave. Room 237 was on the 3rd floor, halfway down a long, narrow hallway, lit by fluorescent tubes that buzzed faintly. The carpet was worn in the center, patterned with decades of footsteps. David unlocked the door and pushed it open. The room was exactly what they expected. 2 queen beds with floral bedspreads, a small table by the window, a TV mounted on the wall, a bathroom with chipped tiles, and a shower curtain that had seen better days. Rebecca set her purse down and smiled. "It's fine. We've stayed in worse." The kids scattered immediately. Lucas claimed the roll-away cot. Sophie bounced on one of the beds. Emma sat by the window, already lost in her book. Mia clutched Mr. Hops and watched everything with wide, cautious eyes. David checked his watch. "It's almost 5. Let's grab dinner, then get some rest. We've got a long drive tomorrow." They left the room at 5:20 p.m. The door clicked shut behind them. according to the restaurant receipt later found in David's wallet. They ate at a diner 2 blocks away. Burgers, fries, milkshakes. The waitress remembered them. She said they seemed happy, normal. The kids were a little loud, but nothing unusual. They returned to the hotel at 7:45 p.m. Trevor was still at the front desk. He gave them a polite nod as they passed. They took the elevator back to the 3rd floor. At 8:03 p.m., a guest in room 235, directly next door, heard the Morrisons come in. She heard the kids laughing. She heard the TV turn on. She heard David's voice, muffled but calm, telling someone to brush their teeth. Normal sounds, a normal night. At 10:30 p.m., the same guest heard the TV still playing. She knocked on the wall and asked them to turn it down. The volume lowered immediately. At 11:45 p.m., she heard nothing. Silence. She went to sleep. The next morning, June 15th, housekeeping arrived at 9:20 a.m. A woman named Lorraine Vasquez knocked on the door of room 237. No answer. She used her master key and stepped inside. The room was occupied. The beds were unmade. Suitcases were open on the floor. Toiletries were arranged on the bathroom counter. The TV was on, muted but on, playing an infomercial. Lorraine saw nothing unusual. She assumed the family was out. She left a note saying she'd return later and moved on to the next room. At 2 p.m., the front desk received a call. Room service. Someone from room 237 had dialed down and ordered 2 sandwiches, a bowl of soup, and a Coke. Trevor took the order. He didn't think twice. Guests ordered food all the time. The kitchen prepared the order. A porter named Miguel Reyes brought it up at 2:30 p.m. He knocked on the door of room 237. No answer. He knocked again. Room service. Still nothing. He waited. Knocked a 3rd time. Finally, he used his radio to call the front desk. Hey, room 237 ordered food, but no one's answering. Trevor frowned. Leave it outside the door. They probably stepped out. Miguel set the tray down and left. At 4 p.m., the tray was still there, untouched. By 6 p.m. on June 15th, the Greystone staff was getting concerned. Checkout had been at 11 a.m. The Morrisons were now 7 hours overdue. Their car was still in the parking lot. Their room key hadn't been returned. Trevor called the room. No answer. He waited 15 minutes and called again. Still nothing. At 6:30 p.m., the hotel manager, a man named Bernard Klein, made the decision to enter the room. He took Trevor and Miguel with him. Bernard knocked firmly. Mr. Morrison, this is hotel management. We need to confirm you're okay. Silence. Bernard slid his master key into the lock. The door opened with a soft click. The 3 men stepped inside and froze. The room was empty, not abandoned, not ransacked, just empty. But it was wrong. The beds were made perfectly. Hospital corners, pillows fluffed, bedspreads smooth. Not the way housekeeping would have done it. Lorraine hadn't come back yet. Someone else had made those beds. The table by the window was set. 6 plates, 6 forks, 6 glasses filled with water. As if the family had been about to sit down for a meal. And the TV, still on, still muted, playing the evening news. But no people, no luggage, no toiletries, no Mr. Hops. Bernard walked slowly into the bathroom. Empty. Towels folded neatly on the rack. Shower curtain pulled back. Tub dry. Trevor checked the closet. Nothing. Miguel looked under the beds. Nothing. Where are they? Trevor whispered. Bernard didn't answer. He stepped back into the hallway and looked both ways. The corridor was silent, empty. He pulled out his radio. Call the police. The police arrived within 20 minutes. Officers secured the room and began processing it as a potential crime scene. They dusted for fingerprints, photographed everything, interviewed the staff. They found the Morrisons' fingerprints everywhere, on the light switches, the door handles, the TV remote, but no one else's. They found no signs of struggle, no blood, no broken glass, no forced entry. The window was locked from the inside. The door had been locked from the inside. 6 people had vanished from a sealed room on the 3rd floor. Detective Sarah Callahan led the investigation. She was thorough, methodical, and deeply unsettled. In her 20 years on the force, she had never seen anything like this. She interviewed the guest in room 235. The woman confirmed she'd heard the family the night before. Normal sounds, nothing alarming. She had gone to sleep around midnight and heard nothing after that. Detective Callahan interviewed Trevor. He described the check-in. Normal. Unremarkable. She interviewed Lorraine, the housekeeper. Lorraine confirmed she'd entered the room that morning. Everything was normal. Messy, but normal. She interviewed Miguel, the porter. He confirmed the room service order. Someone had called for room 237. The voice was male. Calm. Gave the order clearly. Did you recognize the voice? Callahan asked. Miguel shook his head. I didn't pay attention. It sounded normal. Callahan played back the hotel's phone logs. The call had come from room 237's landline at 2 p.m. on June 15th. But according to Lorraine, the room had been empty that morning. So who made the call? The police expanded the search. They checked security footage. The Greystone system was old, grainy, but functional. It showed the Morrison family entering the hotel at 4:17 p.m. on June 14th. It showed them leaving for dinner at 5:20 p.m. It showed them returning at 7:45 p.m. And then nothing. No one entered or exited room 237 after that. The stairwell cameras showed nothing. The elevator cameras showed nothing. The parking lot cameras showed their car, still there, untouched. Detective Callahan stood in the hallway outside room 237, staring at the door. They didn't leave, she said quietly. Her partner, Officer Mike Torres, frowned. Then where are they? She didn't answer. The case made local news, then regional, then national. The story was too strange, too clean, too impossible to ignore. Search teams combed the hotel. They checked every room, every closet, every storage space. They brought in dogs. They checked the roof, the basement, the air ducts. Nothing. The FBI was consulted. They reviewed the evidence and found no federal angle, no ransom demand, no signs of abduction, just 6 people who had ceased to exist. After 3 weeks, the case went cold. The Morrison family was declared missing. The hotel kept room 237 sealed. Bernard Klein, shaken and unable to explain what had happened, made the decision. The room would never be rented again. The Greystone Hotel changed hands 3 times over the next 3 decades. Each new owner inherited the same unspoken rule: don't touch room 237. The door stayed locked. The key stayed in the manager's office. Guests occasionally asked about it, curious why one room on the 3rd floor was always unavailable. The staff gave vague answers. Under renovation, structural issues, not in service. But the truth was simpler. No one wanted to go inside. In 2025, the Greystone was purchased by a development company. They planned to renovate the entire building, convert it into modern apartments. Construction began in March. On April 8, 2025, a demolition crew reached the 3rd floor. They were tasked with gutting the old rooms, stripping them down to the studs. When they reached room 237, the foreman, a man named Eddie Garza, hesitated. He'd heard the stories, but stories didn't pay the bills. He unlocked the door. The room looked exactly as it had in 1994. The beds were still made. The table was still set. The TV was off now. The power had been cut years ago, but it was still there, mounted on the wall. Eddie stepped inside carefully. Dust covered everything. The air was stale, undisturbed. His crew followed him in. They began removing furniture, tearing up carpet, pulling down light fixtures. And then, behind the headboard of the far bed, one of the workers found something. A piece of paper, folded, tucked into a gap between the wall and the bed frame. Eddie unfolded it carefully. It was a note, handwritten in blue ink. "We didn't leave. We couldn't. It won't let us. Don't stay after dark. If it calls your name, room 237 isn't a room. It's a door. And it only opens one way." At the bottom, a signature. David Morrison. June 15th, 1994. Eddie stared at the note. His hands were shaking. One of his crew members leaned over. Eddie didn't answer. He folded the note, slipped it into his pocket, and walked out of the room. He never went back. The demolition of the Greystone Hotel was completed in September 2025. The building was gutted, rebuilt, and converted into luxury apartments. Room 237 no longer exists. It was merged with the neighboring unit. The walls were torn down. The floor was replaced. Every trace of the original space was erased, but the note still exists. Eddie Garza kept it. He showed it to Detective Sarah Callahan, now retired, who confirmed the handwriting matched David Morrison's signature from the hotel registry. She has no explanation. In interviews, she says only this: "I've worked hundreds of cases. I've seen terrible things. But room 237 is the only one that keeps me awake at night. Because 6 people didn't just vanish. They were taken, and I don't think we'll ever know by what. The Morrison family has never been found. No bodies, no evidence, no closure. But every now and then, residents of the new apartments report strange sounds from the walls. Faint voices, children laughing, a TV turning on by itself in the middle of the night. And when they call maintenance, no one can find the source. Because some doors, once opened, never fully close. 6 people checked into room 237 in 1994. They never checked out. And 31 years later, the only thing we know for certain is this: they didn't leave. They couldn't. If you want more mysteries that defy explanation, subscribe now. Because some hotels don't just host guests, they keep them. And room 237 is still listening.